I think we've got them exactly where we want them. I smiled for the first time that day and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Good, let him sweat. The settlement conference was scheduled for the following Wednesday at Carol's office. Neutral territory, polished wood tables, coffee no one actually drinks. The kind of room where people politely decide how to divide the wreckage of a marriage. Brandon arrived with James Peterson and a briefcase full of paperwork, clearly hoping documents could somehow fix character flaws. He looked terrible. Hair unkempt. Shirt wrinkled. Eyes hollow. The unmistakable look of a man who had been sleeping on someone's couch and realizing far too late that fantasy doesn't come with decent pillows. He looked at me as we sat down. Madison, his voice was quiet, small. Thank you for agreeing to this. I didn't even sit softer. I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for the boys. That shut him up. Peterson cleared his throat, sliding into lawyer mode. My client is prepared to make a reasonable offer that prioritizes the best interests of the children. I folded my hands. Here we go. Mr. Harrison is willing to accept a 60-40 split of marital assets, with him taking the smaller portion. He is also willing to agree to joint custody with alternating weeks. Carol didn't blink. Interesting. She leaned back. What does he want in return? Peterson adjusted his tie. He would like Mrs. Harrison to agree not to pursue the financial infidelity claim, and he would prefer a mutual non-disclosure agreement preventing either party from discussing the details of the marriage breakdown. For one full second, I just stared at him. Then I almost laughed. Actually laughed. Let me make sure I understand this. I leaned forward. He wants me to pretend he didn't use family money to fund his affair, and he wants legal paperwork making sure I can't tell the truth about what he did. Peterson shifted. My client made some poor personal choices, Carol cut in like a blade. Your client committed adultery and financial fraud. Those are not poor personal choices. Those are betrayals of trust and violations of fiduciary responsibility within a marriage. Brandon leaned forward. Madison, please. There it was, the pleading voice. Late, always late. I know I hurt you, but dragging this through court isn't going to help anyone. I looked at him. Calm, cold. It will help our sons understand that actions have consequences. They're children, he snapped. They don't need all the ugly details. I let that sit for a moment, then I answered. They already know the ugly details, Brandon. They lived through them. They watched you lie. They watched you disappear. They watched you choose another woman over your family. His jaw tightened. I never chose anyone over them. I nodded slowly. You chose Brittany every single time you lied about where you were. Every time you used money meant for your children on hotel rooms and romantic dinners. Every time you came home distracted, absent, emotionally unavailable. His voice cracked. I was confused. I was unhappy. I made mistakes. I held his gaze. No, you made choices. Now you get to live with them. Carol slid a folder across the table. Here's our counteroffer. Peterson opened it, and his eyebrows immediately went up. Mrs. Harrison keeps the house. 70% of marital assets. Primary custody. Mr. Harrison receives supervised visitation every other weekend until he completes court-ordered counseling and demonstrates consistent, child-focused behavior for a minimum of 6 months. Peterson looked up. That is completely unreasonable. Carol opened a second folder. No, what's unreasonable is asking my client to reward betrayal with half of everything she built. Then she started laying out evidence like cards in a very expensive poker game. Hotel receipts on the family credit card. Restaurant bills for 2 on nights I was home helping with homework. Phone records, printed emails, texts, receipts, proof. So much proof. I watched Brandon's face lose color 1 page at a time. Carol kept going. We also have written statements from both children expressing their preference to remain primarily with their mother, and documentation of Mr. Harrison's attempt to remove them from school without authorization. Brandon sat up. That was a misunderstanding. It was a violation, I said, just like everything else since this started. Peterson gathered the papers and leaned close to whisper something to Brandon. He listened, then shook his head. Finally, quietly, my client needs time to consider. Of course, Carol said. Smooth. Professional, deadly. But this offer expires in 72 hours. After that, we proceed to court. Brandon looked at me, and for the first time, I think he fully understood what losing actually looked like. And if we go to court, I answered before Carol could, then everything becomes public record. Every email, every lie, every dollar you spent chasing your affair. I paused. Is that really what you want? He looked like he might be sick. Honestly, good. I need to think, I stood. Think fast. Then I walked out, left him there with his lawyer, his paperwork, and the full weight of consequences. Carol caught up with me in the hallway. That went well. I grabbed my bag. He'll take the deal. She raised an eyebrow. You sound very certain. With the evidence we have, he'd be lucky to get supervised visitation once a month if we went to court. He knows that. She smiled. That's my girl. My phone rang on the drive home. Brandon, I answered on speaker. Madison, please don't do this. I kept driving. Do what? Hold you accountable? Destroy my relationship with my sons? I almost laughed again. I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. They'll forgive me eventually, but not if you turn them against me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I did not turn them against you. You did that yourself. His voice cracked again, never changing. Please, I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't take my children from me. I exhaled slowly. I am not taking them from you. I am protecting them while you figure out whether being their father is actually important to you. Of course it is. Then prove it. Silence. Take the deal. Get counseling. Learn how to put their needs ahead of your ego. Show them they matter more than whatever fantasy you were chasing. How am I supposed to do that with supervised visitation? I answered without hesitation. The same way you're supposed to do everything else now. One choice at a time. One day at a time. One opportunity to be better than you were yesterday. Then I hung up. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop giving someone extra chances to avoid becoming accountable. That evening, I sat down with the boys. No distractions. No TV, just truth. Luke looked up first. Is Dad going to live with us again? I shook my head gently. No, sweetheart, Dad and I are getting divorced. That means we won't be married anymore and he'll live somewhere else. Luke nodded slowly, trying to fit grown-up pain into a child-sized understanding. Matthew asked the harder question. But we'll still see him? Yes, but it'll be different. I chose my words carefully. For now, when you see Dad, there will be another adult there too. Someone whose job is to make sure everyone feels safe. Luke frowned. Why? Because Dad needs to learn some new ways of being a parent, ways that put you and your brother first, always. Matthew understood immediately. Of course he did. He has to prove he won't hurt us again. I nodded. Something like that. He looked down. Quiet, what if he can't? I reached across the table. Then we keep taking care of each other, just like we already have. Luke climbed into my lap and wrapped his arms around my neck. I don't want Dad to hurt us anymore. I held him tightly. He won't, baby, I promise. His voice was so small it almost broke me. How do you know? I kissed the top of his head. Because I won't let him. The next morning, Carol called. I answered before the second ring. Well, she smiled through the phone. He took the deal, signed everything. I sat down slowly. Just like that? Just like that. Primary custody with you, the house, 70% of assets, supervised visitation every other weekend. And he dropped the NDA demand. Apparently he decided quiet humiliation was better than public destruction. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. So it's really over. It's really over. A pause. Then softly, congratulations, Madison, you won. I hung up and stood there in my kitchen in my house, where my sons would grow up safe, loved, protected. Free from the chaos their father created, I didn't feel victorious. Victory is loud. This wasn't loud. This was tired, sad, relieved. This was standing in the silence after the storm and realizing the roof was still there, that the house still stood, that we still stood, and more than anything I felt free. That afternoon, I picked up the boys and took them for ice cream. By then, it had become our ritual, a small tradition, a quiet rebellion against chaos. Mint chocolate for Matthew, strawberry for Luke, coffee for me because some wounds require caffeine. We sat at our usual table by the window, sunlight spilling across the plastic chairs, life moving normally outside while ours quietly rebuilt itself inside. Matthew looked up first. Mom? Yeah. He stirred his ice cream thoughtfully. Are you happy? Kids ask the hardest questions like they're asking for ketchup. Simple, direct, no escape. I considered it carefully, because children deserve honest answers. I'm not happy about what happened to our family, I said. I'm not happy that your father made the choices he made. I'm not happy that you two had to grow up faster than you should have. I reached across the table and touched his hand. But I am happy that we're going to be okay. Luke looked up immediately. Are we? I looked at my sons. one too old for 15, one still soft enough to believe the world was mostly good, and I meant every word of what came next. We're going to be better than okay. Both of them watched me closely, so I kept going, because sometimes motherhood is just choosing the right truth at the right moment. We're going to be honest with each other. We're going to protect each other. We're going to build something good out of what's left, maybe not the life we planned, but a good life, a real one. Matthew nodded slowly, like he was filing the words somewhere important. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. What about Dad? I took a sip of coffee. What about him? Is he going to be okay? That one hit harder, because even hurt children still hope, even betrayed children still love, and maybe that's the purest kind of grace. I looked at them, these incredible, resilient boys who had every reason to be angry and were still capable of compassion. I don't know, sweetheart, I hope so, but that part is up to him now. Luke nodded quietly. I hope so too, I smiled. That's very grown-up of you, baby. Matthew looked at me, serious, steady. Mom, yeah, thank you for protecting us. That one nearly broke me, but I smiled anyway. Thank you for being worth protecting. We finished our ice cream and drove home through golden afternoon sunlight, the radio low, the road stretching ahead of us like something open instead of something ending. And somewhere between the stoplights and the quiet and the sound of my sons laughing in the backseat, I realized something. Brandon had started this story, but I had finished it, and we were going to be just fine. 6 months later, life had settled into something new, not perfect, not painless, but stable, and sometimes stable is its own kind of miracle. Brandon had completed his court-ordered counseling and was seeing the boys every other Saturday. The supervised visits were awkward for everyone, necessary but awkward. Trust does not regrow because someone says sorry. It grows because someone shows up, again, and again, and again. Matthew still watched him carefully during every visit, not with hatred, with caution, protective of Luke in a way no 15-year-old should have to be. Luke had stopped crying at night. That alone felt like a victory worth celebrating. He laughed more now, slept better, started talking about soccer again, started being 11 again. Brandon had lost his job at Harrington Global Group. No surprise there. Turns out companies frown on affairs, public humiliation, and HR disasters. He was working at a smaller company now, less money, smaller apartment. A life that looked a lot less glamorous than the fantasy he'd risked everything for. Brittany had been fired too. She was going through her own spectacular divorce. I'd heard through the grapevine that she and Brandon had tried to make things work after everything exploded. Apparently, when two people lie their way into a relationship, trust becomes a difficult hobby. It didn't last. Shocking. As for me, I was learning how to be happy again, not perform happiness, not survival mode happiness, real happiness. The kind that feels quiet, the kind that doesn't require pretending. I started therapy, actual therapy, not because I was broken, because I was rebuilding, because betrayal leaves fingerprints even after the person is gone, because I had spent too many years shrinking myself to keep peace with someone determined to create chaos. My therapist helped me understand something life-changing. None of it was my fault, not his affair, not his lies, not his unhappiness. Those were his choices, his responsibilities, his failures, not mine. I also started dating again, nothing serious.